The harsh Monday morning sun baked the thick layer of smog outside the glass walls of the Park Group Tower. The air conditioning in Angela's new vice president office was running on full blast, but she still felt a hot drop of sweat slide down her neck. She was staring at her computer screen, tracing the money Marcus had stolen. The heavy oak door did not just open, it exploded backward, slamming against the wall with a loud, violent crack. Angela jumped in her leather chair. Cadden walked into the room. He did not look like a smooth, cold billionaire today. He looked like a wild animal. His suit jacket was gone, his dark hair was messy, his hands were curled into tight fists, his knuckles completely white. The look in his dark eyes was pure, unfiltered murder. He crossed the large office in 3 massive steps and slammed a tablet face down onto her wooden desk. The loud smack echoed in the quiet room. "Explain it," Cadden growled. His voice was rough, like he had been screaming. Angela looked at the back of the tablet. She did not reach for it. "Explain what, Cadden?" "My father just sent a message to the entire executive board," Cadden said. He leaned his hands heavily on her desk, bringing his angry face inches from hers. "It was an anonymous tip. It said I am planning to pull out of the Long Beach Harbor deal. It said I am trying to steal company funds. He is trapping me early. He knows we know." Angela felt the blood drain out of her face. "That is impossible. We wiped Marcus's computer. We kept the files offline." "Exactly," Cadden hissed, his eyes burning into hers. "Nobody knew about those files except me, Marcus, and you. Marcus is gone. I didn't say a damn word, so that leaves you." "I didn't leak it," Angela said, keeping her voice completely steady even though her heart was pounding. Cadden suddenly reached across the desk. He did not hit her, but he grabbed the back of her expensive red silk chair and pulled it hard toward him. The wheels squeaked loudly. He pulled her so close she could feel the heat radiating off his chest. "Then how do you know everything?" Cadden demanded, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "You knew Victoria was going to throw that soup before she even moved. You knew exactly which folder Marcus used to hide his money. You knew the exact schedule of the illegal boats coming into the harbor next week. You see things before they happen, Angela. It makes no fucking sense." Angela swallowed hard. The absolute paranoia in his eyes was terrifying. He was a man who needed total control, and right now, she was the one thing he could not understand. "I am just observant," she lied, looking straight back at him. "You are a massive risk," Cadden said. His grip on her chair tightened. "I am not letting you out of my sight. Get up. We are going back to my house in the hills. I am putting you in the penthouse suite, and I am locking the door. You are going to stay there where my men can watch you 24 hours a day until this war is over." Before we find out how Angela handles this dangerous situation, please leave a like on this video if you're enjoying the story so far, because it really helps the algorithm push more videos like this to you. And let me know in the comments, what would you do right now? Do you think Angela should just surrender and let Cadden lock her up in a mansion for her own safety, or should she fight him to keep her freedom? Who do you predict actually leaked the files to the chairman if it wasn't Angela? And have you ever had someone angrily accuse you of doing something you completely didn't do? Tell me your thoughts down below, and please subscribe to the channel since you are enjoying the ride. Angela stared at Cadden's white knuckles gripping her chair. He was serious. He was going to lock her in a golden cage. He thought he was protecting her, but really he was just letting his own fear control him. In her past life, she would have nodded. She would have let him drag her away to be a prisoner in his mansion. "No," Angela said. Cadden's jaw locked, the muscle in his cheek twitched. "I was not asking you, Angela, get up." "I said no," Angela repeated. She reached up and placed her hands directly over his on the back of the chair. Her hands were smaller, but she pressed down hard. "If you lock me in a room, I am just a pet. I am not a pet, I am your partner. And if you think I leaked that information, then you are not thinking clearly." "Then who did?" Cadden snapped. "Ghosts." "A rat," Angela said coldly. "Your father has a rat inside this building, someone who was watching Marcus, someone who saw me go into his office." "I check the security on this floor every week," Cadden argued, but his voice lost a tiny bit of its heat. "My men are loyal." "Security guards watch the doors," Angela said. She slowly pushed his hands off her chair and stood up. She smoothed down her dark red trousers. "The real rats don't need to walk through doors, they just need a keyboard. Give me until sunset. I will find the person who actually sent that message to the board. I will give you the real spy." Cadden stared at her. The violent storm in his eyes slowly shifted into a cold, dark calculation. He crossed his thick arms over his chest. "You have until 5 o'clock, Cadden said. His voice was like ice. "If you do not have a name and absolute proof by then, my men are dragging you to the car, and you will never see the inside of an office again." He turned his back on her and walked out the door. The heavy oak slammed shut behind him. Angela let out a shaky breath. Her legs felt weak, but she forced herself to sit back down. She had less than 8 hours to save her own life. She turned back to her computer screen. She closed the banking files and opened the master control panel for the entire building. When she was a secretary, she only had access to the basic schedules. Now, as a senior vice president, she had full clearance to see the digital footprints of every single employee in the Park Group. She thought about the leak. The chairman knew Cadden was going to pull out of the harbor deal. He knew it because someone saw Angela pulling the files on Marcus's old computer. Cadden told her to wipe the hard drive. She had done exactly what he asked. But what if the drive was being watched in real time? Angela typed in a string of commands. She pulled up the server logs for the IT department. The screen filled with thousands of lines of green text. It was a massive wall of data. She started filtering it by the time she was in Marcus's office last Friday afternoon. The room was totally silent except for the fast clicking of her mouse. The sun moved across the sky, beating against the glass windows. By 2 in the afternoon, her eyes were burning. Then she found it. A tiny, hidden script buried deep in the network. Someone in the IT department had created a digital mirror. Every time Marcus opened a file, a copy was secretly sent to a dummy email address. And when Angela had logged in to steal the harbor files, the mirror had copied everything she looked at before she wiped the drive. She traced the dummy email address. It bounced around 3 fake servers before landing on a physical computer terminal inside the building. Terminal 4, Floor 12. Floor 12 was the main server room. Angela wrote down the employee ID number logged into that terminal. She clicked a few buttons to pull up the employee file. A picture popped up on the screen. It was a young man with glasses and messy brown hair. His name was David. He had worked for the company for 3 years. Angela stared at his picture. David was the rat. The chairman was probably paying him thousands of dollars to watch Marcus and report back. She could just call Cadden right now. She could show him the logs, but that wasn't enough. Cadden was paranoid. He needed to see blood to believe her. He needed to see the trap snap shut. Angela opened a blank document on her computer. She titled it Park Group Offshore Transfer Codes. She filled the document with completely fake numbers and passwords. She saved it right in the middle of her desktop. Then she picked up her desk phone and called the IT department. "IT support, this is Sarah," a voice answered. "Hi Sarah, this is Angela, the new SVP of operations," Angela said smoothly. "I am having an issue with my new email client. Can you send someone up to my office to look at it? Specifically, I need David from Terminal 4. He helped Marcus with a similar issue last month." "Of course, ma'am," Sarah said. "I will send him right up." Angela hung up the phone. She picked up the encrypted black cell phone Cadden had given her. She dialed his private number. "What?" Cadden answered on the first ring. He sounded completely miserable. "I found your rat," Angela said. "He is coming to my office in 5 minutes. Bring your bodyguards, but stay out of sight in the hallway until I say the word." Cadden hung up without saying goodbye. Angela stood up and walked over to the glass wall. She crossed her arms and waited. The air conditioning kicked on again, blowing cold air across her shoulders. Exactly 5 minutes later, a soft knock hit the heavy oak door. "Come in," Angela called out. The door opened. David walked in. He looked exactly like his picture. He was wearing a cheap grey button-down shirt and holding a small black laptop. He looked nervous. He kept his eyes on the floor. "You asked for me, ma'am?" David asked, his voice shaking just a little bit. "Yes, David," Angela said. She walked back to her desk but did not sit down. She pointed to her computer screen. "My email is crashing every time I try to open a large attachment. Can you fix it?" "I can take a look," David said. He walked around the desk. Angela stepped back, giving him room. She watched him carefully. David sat in her expensive chair. He put his hands on her keyboard. He opened the email program and clicked around for a few seconds, but Angela was not watching the email program. She was watching his eyes. David's eyes flicked to the center of the screen. They locked right onto the fake file named Park Group Offshore Transfer Codes. He swallowed hard, his hand twitched on the mouse. He thought she was just a stupid woman who didn't know anything about computers. He thought she was standing behind him, completely clueless. With lightning speed, David clicked on the fake file, hit copy, and plugged a tiny, invisible black USB drive into the side of the keyboard. He hit paste. The loading bar flashed on the screen for half a second before disappearing. He was stealing the fake file right in front of her face. "I think I see the problem," David said, pulling the tiny USB drive out and hiding it in his palm. He closed the email program. "You just need an update. I can do it from the server room." "Actually, David," Angela said. Her voice was no longer polite, it was deadly cold. "I think you need to empty your pockets." David froze, his fingers stopped moving on the keyboard. He slowly turned his head to look up at her. He tried to smile, but it looked sickly. "Excuse me." "The black drive in your right hand," Angela said. "Put it on the desk." David's face turned completely white. He stood up fast, knocking the leather chair backward. "I don't know what you are talking about. I need to get back to my floor." He took a step toward the door. "Now," Angela said loudly. The heavy oak door swung open. Cadden stood in the doorway. His two massive bodyguards stood right behind him, completely blocking the exit. David stopped dead in his tracks. He looked at Cadden, and absolute terror washed over his face. He knew exactly who Cadden was, and he knew what Cadden did to people who crossed him. "Mr. Park," David choked out, "I was just fixing her computer." Cadden did not say a word. He walked into the room slowly. His dark eyes were locked on David. He moved like a predator cornering a sick rabbit. "He just stole a file from my desktop," Angela told Cadden. "He is the one who set up the mirror on Marcus's old drive. He is the one reporting to your father." David started shaking violently. "No, she is lying. She is trying to frame me. I swear to God, Mr. Park, I didn't do anything." Cadden stopped right in front of David. He reached out with terrifying speed, his massive hand wrapped completely around David's throat. David made a choked, gasping sound. His hands flew up to grab Cadden's wrist, but Cadden's grip was like iron. Cadden lifted him an inch off the floor. "Empty your pockets," Cadden whispered, his face inches from David's. David dug his hand into his grey pants while kicking his feet. He pulled out the tiny black USB drive and dropped it onto the wood desk. Cadden let go of his throat. David collapsed to the floor, gasping for air, clutching his neck. Angela walked over and picked up the black drive. She plugged it into her computer and opened it. The screen showed the fake file she had just created. She turned the monitor so Cadden could see it. "There is your rat," Angela said softly. "I told you I did not leak the Long Beach files." Cadden looked at the screen. Then he looked down at the pathetic, crying man on the floor. The wild paranoia in Cadden's eyes completely melted away. It was replaced by a dark, heavy realization. He had doubted her. He had threatened to lock her in a cage, and she had just handed him the real traitor on a silver platter. He slowly turned to look at Angela. The respect in his dark eyes was absolute. It was a dangerous, lethal trust. "Get him up," Cadden ordered his bodyguards without looking away from Angela. The two massive men stepped into the room. They grabbed David by his arms and dragged him to his feet. David was crying openly now. "Please, Mr. Park," David begged, thick spit flying from his mouth. "The chairman paid me. I have a family. He threatened my family. I had to do it." "You made a bad choice, David," Cadden said coldly. "Take him downstairs, put him in the trunk." "Wait," Angela said. Cadden raised an eyebrow. The guards stopped dragging the crying man. Angela walked right up to David. She looked at his red, tear-stained face. She felt a brief flash of pity, but she crushed it immediately. This man had almost gotten her locked in a mansion forever. He had almost ruined her plan. "We don't need to put him in a trunk," Angela said, looking at Cadden. "We can use him. Your father thinks David is a loyal spy. He trusts David's emails." A slow, wicked smile spread across Cadden's face. He understood exactly what she was doing. "You want to feed my father poison," Cadden said. "Yes," Angela said. She looked back at David. "You are going to go back to your desk, David. You are going to send the chairman exactly what I tell you to send him. You are going to tell him Cadden is completely panicked and running out of money. You are going to make him think his trap is working perfectly." I will, David sobbed, nodding his head so fast his glasses almost fell off. I will do whatever you want. If you try to run, Cadden warned, leaning close to the IT guy's ear, or if you try to tip my father off, there is nowhere on this earth you can hide from me. Do you understand? Yes, sir, David whispered. Get him out of my sight, Cadden told the guards. The guards shoved David out the door and marched him down the hallway. The office was quiet again. Cadden stood near the desk. He looked at Angela for a very long time. He reached up and rubbed the back of his neck, letting out a long, heavy sigh. The tension in his broad shoulders finally relaxed. I was wrong, Cadden said quietly. It was probably the first time in his life he had ever admitted that out loud. Fear makes people stupid, Cadden, Angela replied, leaning against her desk. Do not let your father make you stupid. I am on your side. Cadden took a slow step toward her. He closed the gap between them. He reached out, but this time he did not grab her chair. He gently took her hand. His thumb brushed over her knuckles. No more cages, Cadden promised softly. You keep proving how sharp your teeth are. I would be an idiot to lock you up. Angela felt a warm flush spread across her chest, but she ignored it. The game was far from over. We handled the leak, Angela said, pulling her hand away gently to point at the computer screen. But we still have a major problem. Marcus. Cadden frowned. Marcus is fired. He is locked out of the building. He is nothing. Marcus is greedy, and he is angry, Angela corrected him. He lost a massive paycheck when you threw him out. Men like him don't just disappear. They try to steal whatever is left on the table before the house burns down. We need to handle him before he tries to contact your father and sell whatever secrets he still remembers. So we send the men to his house and break his legs, Cadden said simply. No, Angela said. A dark, terrifying plan was forming in her mind. We don't break his legs, we let his own greed kill him. Cadden slowly walked back around the large wooden desk and sat down in his leather chair. He leaned back, resting his chin on his steepled fingers. The heavy air in the office felt thick with tension. He watched Angela with a dark, fascinated stare. She wasn't just surviving his world, she was learning how to control it. How does his own greed kill him? Cadden asked softly. Angela turned the computer monitor back toward herself. She opened the digital folder she had stolen from Marcus's hard drive. Marcus knows the passwords to your father's offshore bank accounts, Angela explained, pointing at the screen. He helped set them up for the Long Beach Harbor deal, but he also skimmed a little off the top for himself. Not a lot, just enough that he thought nobody would notice. I saw the hidden transfers in his personal file. My father hates thieves, Cadden whispered. A cold smile started to form on his lips. Exactly, Angela said. Right now Marcus is desperate. You fired him. He has no income and he knows your father will probably kill him just to tie up loose ends. He needs money to run away. He is going to try to sell my family to your father's assassins to buy his own life. I know he is. But I already hid my mother and brother. When Marcus figures out they are gone, he will panic. She typed a few fast commands into the keyboard. The screen turned black, showing lines of green code. So I am going to give him a gift, Angela said. I am going to open a back door into one of the chairman's biggest offshore accounts. I will leave it completely unprotected for exactly 10 minutes. I will send an automatic alert to Marcus's private phone. When he sees millions of dollars just sitting there waiting to be taken, he won't be able to stop himself. He will try to steal the money. And while he is stealing it, Cadden finished the thought, his dark eyes shining with pure violence, we send an alert to my father's money launderers. We show them Marcus is draining their accounts. Before we see how Marcus falls into this deadly trap, please join our amazing community by leaving a like on this video. Your support truly means the world to me and helps our CEO Saga's family grow by pushing these stories to new viewers. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. What do you think is going to happen to Marcus when the mob catches him? Will they make it fast, or will they make him suffer? Please share your thoughts with us below, and if you're enjoying the ride, please subscribe to the channel so we can keep bringing you these dark romance stories. Angela hit the enter key. The trap is set, she said. Across town, Marcus was sweating. The hot Los Angeles sun was baking his dirty apartment. The air conditioner was broken, and the smell of old garbage from the alley outside was drifting through the open window. Marcus paced back and forth across his cheap carpet. His hands were shaking. He had spent the last 2 days trying to find Angela's family. He had driven to her old apartment building on the east side, planning to take pictures of her sick mother and her little brother. He was going to send those pictures to the chairman's hitmen. He figured the old man would pay top dollar for the exact location of Cadden's new favorite pet. But the apartment was empty. The neighbors said some big men in black suits had taken them away in the middle of the night. Marcus kicked a pile of dirty clothes across the room. "Fuck," he muttered, wiping sweat off his forehead. "Fuck her." He was out of time. He was out of money. The chairman's men were going to come looking for him soon. They always cleaned up their messes, and Marcus was a very big mess. He needed cash to buy a fake passport and a plane ticket to Mexico. Suddenly, his laptop beeped loudly from the kitchen table. Marcus stopped pacing. He walked over to the table and looked at the screen. It was an automated alert from the hidden tracking software he had secretly installed on the Park Group servers years ago. He thought Cadden's IT guys would have found it by now. He clicked the alert. His eyes went wide. One of the chairman's massive offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands was suddenly unlocked. The security firewall was completely down. The balance on the screen showed $12 million. Marcus licked his dry lips. His heart started slamming against his ribs. It was a glitch. It had to be a glitch in the banking software. Come on, Marcus whispered to himself, his hands shaking as he typed on the keyboard. He didn't care why the door was open. He just knew he had to walk through it. He opened a hidden transfer window. He typed in the routing numbers for his own secret bank account in Panama. He highlighted the entire $12 million. He paused for one single second. If the chairman caught him stealing this much money, they wouldn't just kill him. They would skin him alive, but if he didn't take the money, they were going to kill him anyway. Marcus slammed his finger down on the enter key. The screen showed a green loading bar. The money was moving. What Marcus didn't know was that 10 miles away, inside the dark basement of a fake import business, a loud alarm was going off. 3 large Korean men in sharp suits were staring at a computer screen. They were the chairman's money managers, and they were watching Marcus's exact IP address drain their boss's money in real time. The biggest man picked up a heavy black phone and dialed a number. "We have a rat," the big man said in Korean. "It is Marcus. He is at his apartment in Hollywood. He is stealing the boss's money. Handle it." Marcus watched his screen. The green loading bar hit 100%. The transfer was complete. $12 million was sitting in his Panama account. He let out a loud, crazy laugh. He actually did it. He was rich. He was going to live like a king on a beach where nobody could ever find him. He slammed his laptop shut and grabbed his keys from the counter. He didn't even pack a bag. He just ran for the front door. He grabbed the brass doorknob and pulled the door open. A massive fist wearing dirty black leather gloves smashed directly into Marcus's face. The sound of his nose breaking was a wet, heavy crunch. Marcus flew backward, his feet leaving the floor. He crashed hard onto his cheap carpet, blood exploding from his face and splashing across his white shirt. He groaned, rolling onto his side. The pain in his face was blinding. He tried to open his eyes. 3 men walked into his apartment. They closed the door quietly behind them and locked the deadbolt. They did not look like corporate security. They wore dark clothes and had cold, dead eyes. One of them pulled a long, thick knife from his belt. "Please," Marcus choked out, spitting a mouthful of blood onto the floor. He held his hands up in the air. "I can put the money back. I swear to God I can put it back right now." The man with the knife did not say a word. He stepped forward and kicked Marcus hard in the stomach. All the air left Marcus's lungs in a loud rush. He curled into a tight ball, gasping for breath. "The chairman does not like thieves," the man said softly. His voice was heavy with a thick accent. "He likes thieves even less when they try to run." Marcus closed his eyes. He thought of the $12 million. He thought of the beach in Mexico. And then he felt the cold, sharp steel press against his throat. Inside the cold vice president office, Angela watched the final lines of code run across her screen. The transfer was complete, and the tracking alert had successfully triggered the mob's security system. Cadden walked over and stood right behind her chair. He placed his large, warm hands on her shoulders. The heat of his palms seeped through her red silk jacket. "It is done," Angela said softly. She didn't feel happy. She didn't feel sad. She just felt like a soldier marking a target off a list. "Good," Cadden whispered. His thumbs slowly rubbed circles into her tense muscles. He got exactly what he deserved. You protected your family, you protected my company. Angela leaned her head back slightly, just enough to feel the solid wall of his chest behind her. Your father is going to be furious. When his men tell him Marcus tried to steal from him, he will realize he is losing control of his people. He is going to lash out. Let him, Cadden said. His voice was dark and confident. We are ready for him. But Cadden was wrong. They were not ready for what the chairman was about to do. The next morning, the sky over Los Angeles was thick with grey clouds, trapping the heat and the smog close to the ground. The air felt heavy and hard to breathe. Angela walked out of her new office to grab a cup of coffee from the break room. The executive floor was quiet. People were keeping their heads down, afraid of the sudden changes in power. Her encrypted black phone buzzed in her pocket. Angela quickly pulled it out. She expected it to be Cadden, but it wasn't his number. The screen showed a private blocked caller ID. She walked back into her office and closed the heavy oak door. She locked it. She answered the phone and held it to her ear. Hello, Angela said. Is this the new vice president? A voice asked. It was a man's voice. He had a thick, rough Irish accent. It sounded like gravel grinding together. Angela's blood ran cold. Nobody had this number except Cadden and his top security men. Who is this? Angela demanded. My name is Quan, the voice said calmly. I do special favors for Chairman Park. He told me you have been causing a lot of trouble for his son. He told me you got a little too smart for your own good. I respect a smart girl, but I don't respect a thief. Angela gripped the phone tighter. Quan, she didn't know that name from her past life. This was something completely new. She had changed the timeline too much, and now the chairman was bringing in outside monsters. I don't know what you are talking about, Angela lied smoothly. Quan laughed. It was a harsh, dry sound. Sure you do, sweetheart. You moved your mother and your little brother. That was a smart play. You took them off the board, but you forgot where you came from. You forgot about your old neighborhood. Angela felt a sharp pain in her chest. What are you doing? I am standing on the corner of 4th and Main, Quan said. His voice was casual, like he was talking about the weather. Right in front of that dirty little grocery store where you used to buy cheap bread. It's a busy neighborhood, lots of kids playing in the street, lots of old people sitting on their porches. Listen to me, Angela said, her voice dropping into a dangerous warning. If you touch anyone in that neighborhood, Cadden will hunt you down and kill you. Cadden is a boy playing dress-up, Quan spat. I work for the real king of this city. The chairman gave me a very simple job. He wants his son back in line. He wants the Long Beach Harbor deal to go exactly as planned, and he wants you to resign and walk away with nothing. And if I say no, Angela asked, her heart beating so fast it hurt. If you say no, Quan replied, I am going to start burning your old neighborhood to the ground. I have 20 men with me right now. We have gasoline and we have guns. I will shoot the man who owns the grocery store. I will burn down the apartment building where you grew up. I will make sure the blood runs down the storm drains, and every time someone dies I will tell the police it was all because of Angela. Angela closed her eyes. The image of the dirty streets where she grew up flashed in her mind. The old man who always gave her free apples when she didn't have money. The kids who played basketball in the alley. They had nothing to do with this war. Quan was forcing her to make an impossible choice. Surrender her power, let Cadden fall into his father's trap, and go back to being a victim, or keep her power and watch innocent people burn. You have 1 hour, Angela, Quan said. Walk out of the Park Group building and never come back, or the shooting starts. The line went dead. Angela slowly lowered the phone from her ear. Her hands were shaking violently now. She couldn't stop them. The panic was rising in her throat, thick and suffocating. She ran out of her office and sprinted down the hallway. She didn't knock on Cadden's door. She pushed it open and ran inside. Cadden was standing by his desk, looking at a stack of papers. He looked up, and the moment he saw her face, his relaxed posture completely vanished. He dropped the papers. What happened? Cadden asked, his voice instantly dropping into a dark, protective growl. Your father sent a cleaner, Angela said, gasping for air. An Irish guy named Quan. He is in my old neighborhood on the east side right now. He has 20 men. He said if I don't quit and walk away in 1 hour, he's going to burn the entire street down and shoot everyone he sees. Cadden's face turned into a mask of pure, violent rage. The veins in his neck popped out against his skin. I will kill him, Cadden roared. He slammed his fist into the wall. I will rip his fucking head off. Cadden grabbed his cell phone and started dialing numbers fast. Frank, get the cars ready. Bring all 50 men to the garage. We are going to the east side. We are going to slaughter them in the street. Stop, Angela yelled. She grabbed Cadden's arm and pulled his hand down. Cadden looked at her like she was crazy. Angela, let me go. He is going to hurt your people. If you drive 50 armed men into that neighborhood, it will turn into a war zone, Angela said. She forced herself to speak clearly. She forced the panic down. She needed to be smarter than Quan. The police will show up. Innocent people will get caught in the crossfire. That is exactly what your father wants. He wants you to look like a violent gang leader so he can lock you up and take control of your company. Cadden breathed heavily. Then what do? We can't just let him burn it. Angela looked out the window. Her mind raced. She thought about her old neighborhood. She thought about the dark alleys, the broken streetlights, and the people who actually ran those streets. It wasn't a nice neighborhood. It was controlled by a local street gang called the Vipers. They were violent, heavily armed, and they hated outsiders coming onto their turf. When Angela lived there, she always kept her head down to avoid them. But right now, the Vipers were the biggest weapon she had. A cold, ruthless plan formed in her mind. She wasn't the scared little secretary anymore. She was a woman who knew how to play monsters against each other. We don't send your men, Angela said softly. Her eyes were dark and hard. We send the neighborhood. Cadden frowned. What are you talking about? Angela let go of Cadden's arm. She picked up her black phone again. She didn't call the police. She didn't call Quan. She called a number she had memorized years ago. The number for a burner phone used by the leader of the Vipers. What are you doing? Cadden asked. Angela held up a finger to tell him to be quiet. The phone rang 3 times before a deep, angry voice answered. Who is this? The gang leader asked. You don't know me, Angela said, disguising her voice to sound deeper and rougher. But I know you run the east side. I am calling to give you a tip. I don't take tips from strangers on the phone, the man growled. You will want to take this one, Angela said. A crew of Irish mobsters just rolled onto your block, 4th and Main, 20 men carrying heavy guns and gasoline. They are bragging that they are going to burn your territory down and take over the street. They are calling you weak. The line was quiet for a few seconds. The silence was heavy and dangerous. If you are lying to me, bitch, I will find you, the gang leader hissed. Go look out your window, Angela said smoothly. They are standing in front of the grocery store right now. They think they own your street. Angela hung up the phone. She looked at Cadden. Cadden was staring at her with wide eyes. A dark, twisted smile slowly spread across his face. He finally understood her terrifying intellect. You just told a heavily armed street gang that the Irish Mafia is trying to steal their territory, Cadden said, his voice full of dark awe. Yes, Angela said, putting the phone back in her pocket. Quan brought 20 men to scare a poor neighborhood. He didn't realize he was standing in the middle of a snake pit. The Vipers will not let outsiders disrespect them on their own turf. They are going to attack Quan's men before Quan even has a chance to light a match. They are going to tear each other apart, Cadden whispered. Exactly, Angela said. The ice was completely back in her veins. Let the criminals shoot each other, and when they are both bleeding and broken, then you take your 50 men and you wipe out whoever is left standing. The cold Lowe's Angels rain slammed against the massive glass windows of Cadden's office. It was Friday night. The city was completely dark, covered in thick black storm clouds. Thunder rolled over the hills, shaking the heavy oak doors. Angela stood in front of the mirror in the private bathroom attached to Cadden's suite. She wasn't wearing a dark red business suit tonight. She was wearing tight black cargo pants, heavy black boots, and a waterproof tactical jacket. She looked at her reflection. Her face was calm. Her hands were perfectly steady. She was ready to finish the job. She walked out of the bathroom. Cadden was standing by his desk. He was dressed in the same dark tactical gear. He was sliding a heavy black magazine into an assault rifle. The metallic clack of the gun echoed in the quiet room. The ship is 20 miles off the coast, Cadden said without looking up. Frank's boats are waiting at the marina. We have 1 hour to get on the water before my father's men realize the cargo isn't coming to the dock. Are we taking all 50 men? Angela asked. 30, Cadden replied, slinging the rifle over his broad back. He picked up a smaller handgun and held it out to her. "I left 20 at the penthouse with your mother and brother. I'm not taking any chances. My father is wounded and wounded animals bite." Angela took the heavy gun. She checked the safety, just like Cadden had shown her earlier that day, and slid it into the holster on her hip. "Good." They walked out of the office and took the private elevator down to the garage. The black SUVs were waiting. The men inside were completely silent. They knew tonight was the night they either took the crown or died in the ocean. The drive to the marina was fast. The rain kept the normal Friday night traffic off the roads. They pulled into a dark private shipping yard. 3 heavy black speedboats were tied to the wooden docks, bobbing violently in the rough water. Frank was standing in the pouring rain holding a thick rope. "Engines are hot, boss. The storm is getting worse out there. It's going to be a rough ride." "We need the storm," Cadden yelled over the sound of the rain and the crashing waves. "The rain will hide us from the cargo ship's radar. Get in." Angela climbed into the front boat. The water was freezing cold. It soaked her hair instantly. Cadden jumped in right beside her. He put his arm around her waist, holding her tight against the side of the metal boat as Frank hit the throttle. The 3 boats shot away from the dock, cutting through the black water. The ride was brutal. The massive waves tossed the small speedboats up and slammed them down hard. Angela held on tight to a metal rail. The salt water burned her eyes, but she didn't close them. She stared out into the dark, looking for the target. After 30 minutes of slamming through the storm, Frank pointed a thick finger straight ahead. A massive shadow was moving through the rain. It was the cargo ship. It looked like a floating black mountain. There were hardly any lights on the deck. The smugglers were trying to stay hidden in the dark. "Cut the engines," Cadden shouted into his radio. The 3 speedboats went quiet. They drifted closer to the giant ship, hiding in its massive blind spot. The waves pushed them right up against the rusted metal hull. "Grapple hooks go," Frank whispered. 4 men threw heavy metal hooks up into the dark. The hooks caught the metal railing of the cargo ship's deck with a dull clank. They pulled the ropes tight. "We go up fast," Cadden told Angela, his face dripping with rain. "You stay behind me. You do not step out of my shadow. If anyone points a gun at you, shoot first." "I know," Angela said. She pulled her handgun out of the holster. The metal grip was cold and wet. Cadden grabbed the thick rope and climbed up the side of the massive ship like a spider. His muscles flexed under his wet jacket. He reached the top, pulled himself over the rail, and disappeared onto the dark deck. A second later, 2 quiet, suppressed gunshots sounded in the rain. Cadden looked over the edge and waved his hand. Angela grabbed the rope. Her boots slipped on the wet metal hull, but she used all her strength to pull herself up. Cadden reached down, grabbed her heavy jacket, and hauled her over the railing. She landed softly on the metal deck. 2 dead men in raincoats were lying near a stack of wooden crates. Cadden's men poured over the railing behind them, fanning out across the massive ship with their rifles raised. "The weapons containers are on the lower deck," Cadden whispered, pointing toward a heavy steel door. "Move." They moved like ghosts through the storm. The rain hid the sound of their boots. They reached the heavy door. Frank kicked it open, and the team rushed down a set of metal stairs into the belly of the ship. The cargo hold was massive and smelled like engine grease and old fish. Rows and rows of giant metal shipping containers were stacked to the ceiling. "Container 404, Angela whispered, remembering the numbers she stole from Marcus's computer. "It should be in the back row." They walked quickly down the narrow aisles between the massive boxes. The ship rocked violently in the storm. "There," Cadden said. He pointed to a dark red container at the very end of the row. The numbers 404 were painted in white on the side. The heavy steel locks were already cut. Cadden motioned for his men to spread out. He walked up to the heavy doors of the container. He grabbed the metal handle and ripped the door open. The container was completely empty. Cadden froze. He stared into the black, empty space. There were no crates, there were no illegal weapons, there was nothing. "It's a trap," Angela gasped. The realization hit her like a punch in the chest. Before Cadden could shout an order, the metal doors at the top of the stairs slammed shut with a deafening crash. The loud click of a heavy lock echoed through the cargo hold. Bright, blinding halogen lights suddenly snapped on, flooding the entire room with harsh white light. Angela raised her hand to shield her eyes. Cadden instantly shoved her behind his back, raising his rifle. His men formed a tight circle around them, aiming their guns at the top of the metal stairs. A loud, screeching microphone feedback filled the room. Well, 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 a woman's voice echoed through the ship's loudspeakers. Look what the rats dragged in. Angela's blood turned to ice. She knew that voice. It was Victoria. Drop the guns, Cadden, Victoria's voice sang out, sickly sweet and dripping with pure poison. Or my men will drop nerve gas through the air vents and watch you all die like bugs. Cadden cursed loudly. He looked up at the glass window of the ship's control room, high above the cargo hold. He couldn't see anything through the glare of the lights. Victoria, Cadden roared, his voice bouncing off the metal walls. You stupid bitch, do you have any idea what you are doing? I know exactly what I am doing, Victoria answered through the speakers. I am doing what your father couldn't, I am cleaning up the mess. The heavy metal door at the top of the stairs unlocked and swung open. A man walked out onto the landing. He was holding a heavy shotgun. He had a thick, ugly scar running across his nose. It was Jin, the chairman's top enforcer, the man who had threatened them in the alley. Jin smiled his crooked, yellow smile. He looked down at Cadden and Angela. At least 30 heavily armed men stepped out behind him, lining the metal walkway above the cargo hold. They all pointed their guns down at Cadden's team. They were completely surrounded, trapped in a metal box. Hello, little girl, Jin called out, looking directly at Angela. I told you to watch your step. How did you know we were coming? Cadden demanded, keeping his rifle aimed directly at Jin's chest. Because Victoria is much smarter than you think, Jin laughed. The door opened again. Victoria walked out onto the walkway. She was wearing a thick, expensive raincoat. She looked down at them with pure, hateful triumph. When you embarrassed me in your office, Cadden, I didn't run to my father, Victoria sneered into a microphone she was holding. I went straight to Chairman Park. I told him his son was completely out of control. I told him you were letting a cheap secretary run the company. The chairman was furious. He realized you were trying to steal the harbor deal, so he asked me to help him fix it. He let you move the guns, Angela yelled up at her. Her mind was racing, desperately looking for a way out. Oh, the guns never got on this boat, sweetie, Victoria laughed. The real shipment came in yesterday on a private yacht. The chairman already has them hidden safe and sound. He sent this empty cargo ship out here just for you. He knew if we leaked the schedule you would try to come be a hero and steal them. He knew you would walk right into a cage. Cadden's jaw locked. His finger tightened on the trigger of his rifle. He could kill Jin and Victoria right now, but the 30 men above them would immediately open fire. They would all be shredded to pieces in seconds. My father gave you his army, Cadden asked Jin. The chairman is an old man, Jin said, leaning against the railing. He is tired. He wants to retire. He promised me that if I kill you tonight and throw your body in the ocean, he will give me your seat at the head of the park group. I will be the new boss. And I will be the one holding his leash, Victoria added, her eyes flashing with greedy delight. Jin gets the company, and my father's real estate business gets complete control of all the park group assets. Everyone wins, except you two. Angela stared up at the walkway. The fear was thick and heavy in the room, but she pushed it down. She looked at Victoria's smug face. She looked at Jin's arrogant smile. They were so proud of themselves. They thought they had won. But Angela saw the crack in their armor. She saw the deadly flaw in their stupid alliance. Victoria was a spoiled, entitled rich girl who thought she owned everyone. Jin was a violent, proud gangster who hated taking orders from anyone, especially women. Angela stepped out from behind Cadden's broad back. Angela, get down, Cadden hissed. You really think you won, Victoria? Angela yelled loudly. Her voice did not shake. It carried perfectly up to the metal walkway. Victoria frowned. She hated that Angela wasn't crying. You are standing in an empty box with 30 guns pointed at your head. Yes, I think I won. You are an idiot, Angela laughed. It was a cold, mocking sound. You really think Jin is going to share power with you? Look at him. She pointed her finger right at the scarred enforcer. Jin is a killer, Angela said, her words slicing through the heavy air. He has spent his entire life doing the dirty work for the Park family. He got his hands covered in blood while you got your nails done. You think a man like Jin is going to let a spoiled little blonde girl tell him what to do? Jin's smile faded slightly. He glanced over at Victoria out of the corner of his eye. Shut up, Victoria screamed into the microphone. Shoot her, Jin, shoot her right now. Jin didn't shoot. He tightened his grip on his shotgun, but he looked down at Angela, listening. "Jin," Angela called out to him. "You know exactly who she is. She is a parasite. She is using you to kill Cadden, and the second we are dead, she's going to call her father's corrupt police friends and have you arrested for the murders on this boat. She will blame it all on the street gang. She will take the park group for herself, and you will spend the rest of your life in a concrete cell." "That is a lie," Victoria shrieked. She turned to Jin. "Don't listen to that trash. She is just trying to save her own life. Kill them." Jin looked at Victoria. His dark eyes narrowed. He remembered how Victoria had treated him in the meetings. She had talked to him like he was a stray dog. She never looked him in the eye. Angela didn't stop. She pressed the knife deeper. "You really think Chairman Park promised you the company?" Angela yelled to Jin. "The chairman hates you, Jin. He thinks you are just a blunt tool. He only agreed to this plan because Victoria's father paid him. You are just the trigger man. When this is over, they are going to throw you away." "I said shoot them," Victoria screamed. She stepped toward Jin and actually shoved his shoulder. "Do your damn job, you ugly thug." It was the worst mistake she could have ever made. Jin's face twisted into pure, violent rage. He was a proud, dangerous man. He had killed dozens of people. He did not take orders from screaming little girls who shoved him. Jin slowly turned his body toward Victoria. He didn't point the shotgun down at Cadden anymore. He leveled the heavy barrel directly at Victoria's chest. Victoria gasped. She dropped the microphone. It hit the metal floor with a loud squeal. "Jin, what are you doing?" "I am sick of your fucking voice," Jin growled. "Drop it, Jin," one of Victoria's personal bodyguards yelled, raising his pistol and aiming it at Jin's head. Instantly, Jin's loyal street soldiers raised their rifles and aimed them at Victoria's bodyguards. The alliance on the walkway completely fractured in 2 seconds flat. Half the men were pointing guns down at Cadden, and the other half were pointing guns at each other. "They are going to betray you, Jin," Angela yelled, throwing gasoline on the fire. "Shoot her before her men shoot you." "Shut up," Jin roared. "No, Jin, listen to me," Victoria cried, putting her hands up. She backed away from the shotgun barrel. "My father will pay you. He will pay you double whatever the chairman promised." "I don't want your money," Jin spat. "I want the crown." Jin's finger squeezed the trigger. The loud boom of the shotgun deafened everyone in the room. The heavy slug hit Victoria right in the chest. The force of the blast lifted her off her feet and threw her backward. She hit the metal railing hard and tumbled over the edge, falling 30 feet down into the cargo hold with a sickening thud. She didn't move. Total chaos erupted. Victoria's bodyguards opened fire on Jin. Jin's men fired back. The men on the walkway started shredding each other to pieces. Blood sprayed across the bright halogen lights. Bullet casings rained down into the cargo hold like deadly hail. Now Cadden roared. Cadden didn't aim at the men shooting each other. He aimed his rifle directly at the glass window of the control room above them. He pulled the trigger and held it down. The heavy bullets shattered the thick glass, destroying the master light controls. The bright white lights exploded in a shower of sparks. The cargo hold went completely pitch black. "Move to the stairs," Cadden yelled in the dark. He grabbed Angela's hand and pulled her hard. The sound of the gunfire above them was deafening. The men on the walkway couldn't see anything. They were just shooting blindly in the dark, killing their own friends in the panic. Angela ran as fast as she could. Her boots pounded on the metal floor. She couldn't see anything. She just trusted Cadden's grip. They reached the metal stairs. Cadden's men pushed up the steps, firing their suppressed rifles up into the darkness, picking off the few men who were trying to shoot down at them. Cadden reached the landing. He stepped right over Jin's dead body. The enforcer had been shot 6 times by Victoria's guards. His arrogant face was staring up at the dark ceiling. They burst through the heavy metal door and out into the pouring rain. The cold air hit Angela's face like a bucket of ice water. The storm was worse now. The waves were crashing over the sides of the massive ship. "Get to the ropes," Frank yelled over the thunder. They ran across the slippery deck. Behind them, the sounds of dying men echoed up from the black cargo hold. The Alliance had completely destroyed itself, exactly like Angela planned. Cadden grabbed the thick rope attached to the speedboat. He looked back at Angela. His face was covered in rain and soot, but his dark eyes were burning with wild victory. "You beautiful, terrifying liar," Cadden shouted over the storm. He grabbed her face and kissed her hard, a brutal mix of adrenaline and rain. He pulled away and lifted her up, practically throwing her over the railing. She slid down the wet rope and crashed into the bottom of the speedboat. Cadden dropped in right behind her. Frank hit the throttle, and the three boats tore away from the massive metal trap, speeding back toward the safety of the dark city. They left the empty ship behind them, filled with dead enemies and broken crowns. The chairman had played his final card, and he had lost everything. The empire didn't belong to the old man anymore. It belonged to the monster and the woman who held his leash. The cold rain lashed against Angela's face like tiny sharp needles. The three black speedboats cut violently through the dark ocean waves, leaving the massive cargo ship far behind them. The sound of the roaring engines drowned out the thunder in the sky. Angela sat on the wet metal floor of the boat, her knees pulled tight against her chest. Her hands were shaking so hard she could barely hold her gun. She wasn't shaking because she was scared. She was shaking because she was still alive. Cadden sat right next to her. He didn't say a word. He just wrapped his massive arm around her shoulders and pulled her tight against his side. His tactical jacket was soaking wet, but his body was burning hot. He smelled like gunpowder, sea salt, and sweat. She leaned her head against his chest and listened to his heart. It was beating fast and hard, just like hers. They had done it. They had walked into a steel trap surrounded by 30 guns, and they had walked out without a single scratch. They had manipulated their enemies into tearing each other apart. Jin was dead. Victoria was dead. The Irish hitmen were bleeding out in the streets of the east side. The speedboat finally slowed down. They glided into the dark, quiet marina. The storm was starting to break, leaving only a light, freezing drizzle. Frank killed the engine and tied the thick rope to the wooden dock. He wiped a mixture of rain and dark blood off his forehead. "We are clear, boss, no police sirens." "Get the men into the trucks," Cadden ordered, his voice rough and tired. He stood up in the rocking boat and held his hand out to Angela. "We are going to the penthouse. We need to check on your family." Angela took his hand. His grip was tight and completely steady. She climbed up onto the wet wooden dock. Her heavy boots squeaked on the boards. They walked quickly to the waiting SUVs. The ride back into the city was completely silent. The streets of Los Angeles were empty and dark. The streetlights reflected off the wet black asphalt. The truck pulled into an underground parking garage beneath a massive, shining glass tower. It was one of the luxury buildings Cadden owned under a dummy corporation. 2 of his heavily armed guards were standing by the private elevator. They nodded to Cadden as he walked past them. The elevator shot up to the top floor. The doors slid open, revealing a massive, beautiful penthouse. The floors were white marble. The furniture was soft and expensive, but right now the beautiful room looked like a military camp. 10 of Cadden's men were sitting on the couches, their rifles resting on their knees. A young boy jumped up from a chair near the window. "Angie." Leo ran across the room. He was wearing his pajamas. He looked terrified. He slammed into her, wrapping his arms tight around her waist. Angela dropped her gun into her holster and hugged her little brother back. She buried her face in his hair. He was safe. He was warm. "I'm here, Leo," Angela whispered, holding him as tight as she could. "I'm right here. Everything is okay now." Leo pulled back and looked up at her. His eyes went wide. He saw the black tactical gear. He saw the heavy gun strapped to her hip. He saw the dark soot and dried blood on Cadden's face standing right behind her. "What happened to you?" Leo asked, his voice shaking. "You look like a soldier. The men who brought us here wouldn't tell me anything. They just said Mom was sleeping in the back room with a nurse." "I had to handle a very bad problem at work," Angela said softly. She reached out and wiped a tear off his cheek with her thumb. "But the problem is completely gone now. Nobody is ever going to hurt us again, I promise." Cadden stepped forward. He looked down at the teenage boy. He didn't try to smile. He didn't try to act friendly. He just looked at Leo with a serious, respectful expression. "Your sister is the smartest person in this city," Cadden told Leo. His deep voice echoed in the large room. "She protected you, and she protected me. You should be very proud of her." Leo looked from Cadden's dark, intimidating face back to Angela. He nodded slowly. He didn't understand exactly what was happening, but he understood that his sister was in charge. "Go back to bed, Leo," Angela told him softly. "I will come check on Mom in a little bit. I need to get out of these wet clothes." Leo walked slowly down the long hallway toward the guest bedrooms. Cadden looked at his head guard. "Is the perimeter secure?" "Yes, Mr. Park," the guard replied, standing up straight. Nobody has come near the building. The scanner shows no trackers on any of the vehicles. Good, stay on high alert, Cadden said. He turned to Angela and touched the small of her back. Come with me. He led her down a different hallway, away from the guards and her family. He pushed open a heavy wooden door. It was the master bedroom. It was huge, with a giant bed and a wall of windows looking out over the dark city. Cadden shut the door behind them and threw the heavy deadbolt. A loud, solid click sealed them inside. The room was quiet. The only sound was the faint hum of the city traffic far below them. Cadden walked over to her. He did not say a word. He reached out and grabbed the zipper of her wet tactical jacket. He pulled it down slowly. He pushed the heavy waterproof material off her shoulders, letting it drop to the thick carpet with a wet thud. He looked at her face. He looked at her dark eyes. You did not flinch, Cadden whispered. His voice was raw and heavy with emotion. When the guns were pointing at us, when Victoria was screaming, you did not flinch. You just looked at Jin and tore his mind apart with your words. I told you I was done being prey, Angela said. She didn't look away from him. She reached up and unbuckled the heavy gun holster from her hip. She let it drop to the floor next to her jacket. I meant it. Cadden's hands went to her waist. His long fingers dug into her sides. He pulled her flush against his chest. The heat coming off him was intense. You caused a bloodbath tonight, Angela, Cadden said softly, leaning down until his lips were brushing against her ear. You burned a street gang to the ground. You made my father's men kill each other. You are a monster. Angela let out a slow, shaky breath. She felt the heavy truth of his words. She had killed people today. She had manipulated the board and watched the pieces bleed. But she didn't feel guilty. She felt safe for the first time in 2 lifetimes. I am whatever I need to be to survive, Angela whispered back, tilting her head to give him better access to her neck. And I am exactly what you need. Cadden let out a low, dark growl. He grabbed the back of her head, twisting his fingers into her damp hair. He brought his mouth down hard onto hers. The kiss was violent. It was rough and demanding. It was the physical release of all the adrenaline, the fear, and the pure victory of the night. Angela kissed him back just as hard. She grabbed the collar of his wet shirt and pulled him closer. She tasted the salt from the ocean and the dark danger that always surrounded him. He backed her up until her legs hit the edge of the massive mattress. They fell backward onto the soft sheets. Cadden hovered over her, his dark eyes burning with absolute possessive fire. You belong to me, Cadden said, his chest heaving as he looked down at her. Not as a secretary, not as a shield. You are my partner. You are my queen. And if anyone ever tries to take you away from me, I will burn the entire world to the ground. Show me, Angela challenged him, pulling him down. The rest of the night was a blur of dark heat and tangled sheets. They didn't sleep. They didn't talk about the dead bodies on the boat. They just claimed each other, cementing the dangerous bond they had built in the fire of the corporate war. When the sun finally came up, it poured harsh, bright light through the giant windows. Angela stood in the bathroom, washing the dried salt and sweat off her skin. She found a pair of black dress pants and a dark grey silk shirt in the closet. They were perfectly tailored for her. Cadden had obviously ordered them before the chaos started. She walked out into the bedroom. Cadden was already dressed in a sharp black suit. He looked completely fresh, like he hadn't just spent the night fighting for his life. He was loading a fresh magazine into his handgun. Are we going back to the office? Angela asked, rolling up the sleeves of her silk shirt. No, Cadden said. He slid the gun into the holster under his suit jacket. We have one piece of trash left to take out. We are going to my father's house. Angela nodded. The game wasn't completely over until the old king was off the board. They walked out to the living room. The guards were already awake and ready. Frank was standing by the door. Leave 5 men here with her family, Cadden ordered Frank. Bring the rest. We are going to the chairman's estate. They rode down the elevator in silence. The morning air outside was crisp and clean after the heavy rain. The black SUVs tore through the empty weekend streets, heading up toward the massive compound in the hills where the chairman ruled his criminal empire. When they reached the heavy iron gates of the estate, the gates were wide open. There were no guards standing outside. The guardhouse was completely empty. Frank slowed the truck down, looking around suspiciously. Boss, it looks abandoned. This place is usually crawling with Jin's men. Jin is dead, Cadden said coldly from the back seat. And the men who survived the boat probably ran to Mexico. The Irish hitmen are dead on the east side. My father has no army left. Frank drove the truck up the long, winding driveway. They stopped in front of the massive wooden doors of the main house. Cadden and Angela got out. The guards spread out, their hands resting on their weapons, but the grounds were completely silent. The expensive cars were gone from the driveway. The staff had fled. Rats always run when they know the ship is sinking. Cadden pushed the heavy front doors open. They walked into the grand foyer. It smelled like expensive wood polish and stale cigar smoke. They walked straight down the main hallway toward the chairman's private study. The heavy double doors were closed. Cadden didn't knock, he kicked the doors open. Chairman Park was sitting behind his massive mahogany desk. He looked old. In the past he had always looked like a terrifying giant. Now he just looked like a tired, frail old man wearing a loose bathrobe. He was holding a glass of brown liquor. His hand was shaking slightly. He looked up when Cadden and Angela walked into the room. "I told my pilot to start the jet," the chairman said. His voice was weak and scratchy. He didn't answer his phone. "None of my men are answering their phones." "They are busy floating in the ocean," Cadden said. He walked slowly into the room. He didn't pull his gun, he didn't need to. "Jin is dead, Victoria is dead. The Irish crew you hired is dead. You lost." The chairman's eyes slowly moved from Cadden to Angela. He stared at her with pure, unfiltered hatred. "You let a street rat destroy our family," the chairman spat at Cadden. He took a shaky sip of his drink. "She poisoned your mind, she took my empire." In her past life, Angela would have felt terrified to be in the same room as the man who ordered her murder. She would have expected him to pull a gun and shoot her right there. Now she just felt pity. Angela walked around Cadden. She stepped right up to the heavy mahogany desk. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a thick stack of folded papers. She tossed them onto the desk, right next to the chairman's glass. "Those are the bank routing numbers for every offshore account you own," Angela said. Her voice was perfectly calm. She didn't yell, she didn't gloat. "I drained them this morning while you were sleeping. The money is gone, your bribes are gone." The chairman stared at the papers, his jaw dropped. "You stole my money." "I took what you tried to steal from Cadden," Angela corrected him. "And I also compiled a very nice digital file full of your emails. Emails ordering hits on local politicians. Emails buying illegal weapons from overseas. If you try to stay in this city, or if you ever try to contact Cadden again, I will send that file to the FBI." The chairman looked up at her. For the first time in his long, violent life, he looked completely defeated. He had tried to play a game of chess, and Angela had just flipped the entire board over. "You are a vicious bitch," the chairman whispered. "Thank you," Angela replied, a cold smile touching her lips. Cadden walked up to the desk. He stood next to Angela. He looked down at the old man who had tormented him for his entire life, the man who had beaten him, manipulated him, and tried to force him to marry a monster. "You have until noon to pack your bags," Cadden told his father. His voice was empty of all emotion. "Get on a commercial flight to somewhere far away. If I see your face in Los Angeles after the sun goes down today, I will not call the FBI. I will just handle you myself. Understand?" The chairman did not answer. He just stared at his glass of liquor. Cadden turned around. He put his hand on the small of Angela's back and guided her out of the room. They walked back down the long hallway, out the front doors, and back into the morning sun. "It's over," Cadden said, looking up at the bright blue sky. "No," Angela said softly, looking at the city skyline in the distance. "It's just beginning." A week later, the Park Group Tower was buzzing with energy. The news had broken early Monday morning. Victoria's father had been arrested on massive corruption charges after an anonymous package of bank records was delivered to the local news stations. The Long Beach Harbor deal was completely cancelled. Chairman Park had officially retired due to poor health and moved to an undisclosed location in Europe. The entire city knew the power had shifted, but nobody knew exactly how it happened. All they knew was that Cadden Park was now the undisputed king of Los Angeles. Angela sat behind her massive oak desk on the executive floor. The nameplate on the heavy door did not say Senior Vice President anymore. It said Chief Operating Officer. She was looking at a spreadsheet on her computer, moving millions of dollars of legitimate money into a new project, when the door opened. Cadden walked in. He was wearing a dark blue suit that fit perfectly. He looked completely relaxed. The heavy, dark weight that used to hang over him was completely gone. He walked around the desk and pulled her chair back slightly. He leaned down and kissed her softly on the neck. "The board meeting is in 10 minutes, Cadden murmured against her skin. "They want to know our plans for the new real estate acquisitions now that Victoria's family is bankrupt." "Tell them we are buying everything," Angela said, leaning her head back into his touch. "We buy it cheap, we clean it up, and we rent it back to them." Cadden laughed quietly. He spun her chair around so she was facing him. He placed his hands on the armrests, trapping her in. "You are ruthless," he said, staring into her dark eyes. "I learned from the best," she replied, reaching up to adjust his silk tie. She looked past his broad shoulder, out the massive glass window. She saw the dirty smog hanging over the city. She thought about the cold alley where she died. She thought about the poor, naive girl who used to cry in the bathroom because the world was too hard. That girl was gone forever. Angela smiled. It was a dark, genuine smile. She pulled Cadden down for another kiss. They were the villains to everyone else in the city, but they had won the game, and nobody would ever dare to touch them again. 6 months later. The Los Angeles night air was cool, and the sky was completely clear for the first time in weeks. The stars were actually shining over the city, totally free of the usual heavy grey smog. Angela stood at the top of the grand marble staircase inside the Park Plaza Hotel. It was the biggest, most expensive hotel in the city, and she owned half of it. She was wearing a long, dark red silk dress that hugged her body perfectly and pooled on the floor at her feet. A thick, heavy diamond necklace rested against her dark skin. She didn't buy it. Cadden had locked it around her neck an hour ago, whispering that it was a trophy for completely crushing their latest business rival. She looked down at the massive ballroom below. It was filled with hundreds of the richest, most powerful people in California. Politicians, movie producers, and real estate billionaires were all drinking expensive champagne and laughing loudly. 6 months ago, these people would not have even looked at her. If she had been in this room, she would have been holding a tray of drinks, completely invisible. Now, every single person in the room was waiting for her to walk down the stairs. Cadden stepped up behind her. He was wearing a custom black tuxedo that made his broad shoulders look even wider. He slipped his arm around her waist, pulling her back against his chest. "They look nervous," Cadden murmured in her ear. "They should be," Angela replied, her voice smooth and cold. "We bought 3 of their companies this morning. They are wondering who is next." "You are absolutely terrifying," Cadden said. He kissed the side of her neck right below her ear. "I love it." They started walking down the marble stairs together. The moment their shoes hit the first step, the loud chatter in the ballroom completely stopped. The music seemed to fade into the background. The elite crowd parted like the Red Sea, making a wide, clear path for them to walk through. People bowed their heads as Cadden and Angela passed. Old men who used to do dirty business with Chairman Park now smiled nervously and held their glasses up in silent toasts. They all knew the rumors. They all knew what happened on the docks, even if the police never found a single piece of proof. They knew the chairman was gone, Jin was dead, and Victoria was a broken memory. They knew Cadden and Angela were the real monsters in the dark. A tall, thin woman with bright blonde hair stepped into the path. She was wearing a silver dress that looked entirely too tight. It was Elena, one of Victoria's old best friends. She had always treated Angela like dirt when she used to visit the office. Elena held a glass of white wine. Her hand was shaking, but she tried to put on a brave, fake smile. "Cadden," Elena said, her voice high and tight. "It is so good to see you. We have all missed you at the country club." Cadden didn't stop walking. He didn't even look at her. He kept his arm firmly around Angela's waist. Elena panicked when she realized he was going to walk right past her. She stepped sideways, blocking Angela. "Angela, wow," Elena gasped, looking at the dark red dress and the massive diamonds. She let out a small, nasty laugh. "You really have moved up in the world. I barely recognized you without your cheap little secretary badge. It must be so hard learning how to use all the right forks at dinner." The music in the room felt like it completely stopped. Everyone standing nearby held their breath. In the past, Angela would have felt her face burn with shame. She would have looked at the floor and let the rich girl step all over her. Angela stopped walking. Cadden stopped with her. He didn't say anything. He just watched Angela, a dark, proud amusement shining in his eyes. He knew exactly what was about to happen. Angela looked Elena slowly up and down. She didn't look angry, she looked completely bored. Elena, Angela said softly, her voice carried easily in the quiet room. Your family owns the shipping warehouses on the west side, correct? Elena blinked, confused by the sudden business question. Yes, my father runs them. Why? Because the rent on that land just tripled, Angela said flatly. Elena's fake smile completely fell off her face. The color drained from her cheeks. What? You can't do that, we have a 50-year lease. You had a lease with a private holding company, Angela corrected her, taking a slow step closer. I bought that holding company yesterday at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I own the dirt your father's buildings sit on, and I think he is paying way too little. You are joking, Elena choked out. Her eyes darted to Cadden, begging for help. Cadden, tell her she is joking, that will ruin my father. My chief operating officer makes all the final decisions on real estate, Cadden said smoothly, his voice like ice. If she says the rent goes up, you better find the money, or pack your boxes. Angela leaned in slightly, bringing her face inches from Elena's pale, terrified face. If you ever step in front of me again, Angela whispered, making sure only Elena could hear the lethal promise in her voice, I won't just raise the rent. I will tear your father's buildings down to the dirt and build a parking lot over them. Now get out of my way. Elena let out a tiny, pathetic whimper. She stepped backward so fast she almost tripped over her own silver heels. She turned and practically ran toward the back of the ballroom, spilling her wine on the floor. Angela didn't even watch her run. She just adjusted the diamond necklace on her chest and kept walking forward. The crowd immediately parted wider. The lesson was clear. The old rules were dead. Cadden was the king, but Angela was the one holding the axe. They walked across the ballroom and stepped out through a set of heavy glass doors onto a massive private balcony. The loud noise of the party faded away behind the thick glass. The balcony looked out over the entire city of Los Angeles. The millions of streetlights stretched out like a glowing golden ocean. Angela walked up to the edge of the stone railing. She leaned her hands on the cool stone and took a deep breath. She thought about her mother, who was currently sleeping safely in the penthouse, completely cared for by private doctors. She thought about Leo, who was starting at an expensive private school next week. She had promised them they would be safe. She had kept her promise. Cadden stepped up behind her. He wrapped his arms around her, pulling her back against his chest again. He rested his chin on the top of her head, looking out at the city with her. They are terrified of you, Cadden said softly into the cool night air. Good, Angela replied. She reached down and rested her hands over his. Fear keeps them honest, and it keeps them away from my family. And what about me? Cadden asked, turning her around gently so she was facing him. He looked down into her eyes. The dark, possessive fire was still there, burning just as hot as the night they fought on the boat. Are you going to keep me honest, too? I am going to keep you alive, Angela said. She reached up and grabbed the lapels of his expensive black tuxedo. She pulled him down until their lips were almost touching. And I am going to make sure we own every single inch of this city before we are done. Cadden smiled. It was the dangerous, brutal smile of a man who had finally found his perfect match. We already do, he whispered. He closed the distance and kissed her hard, sealing the promise in the dark. The city lights burned bright below them, a sprawling empire built on blood, secrets, and a second chance. And they were never giving it back.